Howdy, Samurai Spirit here. One of the coolest and most hyped new manga to release this year was Kagurabachi, written by Takeru Hokuzono and serialized in Shonen Jump. As soon as I read the first chapter, I was totally blown away by how well written it was, and I immediately went out and tried to find more of the author's work. Unsurprisingly, I found that he had done a number of one-shots that were similarly well-crafted and enjoyable to read. Now, being the Kishōtenketsu guy on YouTube, I immediately thought that I just had to make a video breaking down the story structure found in this new series. But then, spoiler alert, I didn't do it. I got lazy, and frankly, as you can tell from the infrequency of uploads to this channel, these videos kind of take a lot of work. But now we're coming to the end of the year, and even I'm not lazy enough to put off a timely video like this until the next calendar year. So, here we are. Today, I'm going to break down the first chapter of Kagurabachi, using the Kishōtenketsu storytelling format that's used in all of your favorite manga and anime in order to better understand what makes it so darn good. And if you don't know or don't remember what Kishōtenketsu is, then I'd highly recommend you check out this video that I made where I explain it pretty darn well. So without further ado, let's get into the video. Forging, also known as tenren, is an important process in making Japanese swords. Tamahagane, steel made from iron sand, is hammered thin, folded, and hammered again to strengthen it and establish the right carbon content. Through tenren and several other highly skilled processes, the lump of steel is transformed into a beautiful, strong katana. Key introduction. The story begins by introducing us to our main cast of characters, as any good manga should. In this case, we meet our protagonist Chihiro and his father Kunishige, and learn that they work as swordsmiths in Japan. More than that, we learn that Chihiro's dad is the best smith in Japan and uses special methods to create special swords. We meet Shiba, Kunishige's cool buddy that went out and fought wars using some of Dad's badass weapons. Note, this segment does a good job of providing information in a way that seems natural rather than through exposition dumps. One small but purposeful example is when Chihiro's dad mentions that Shiba could have called first. It's just a little line, but it goes a long way to explain that this isn't just a standard fantasy setting, something that the reader easily could have taken away from the first few pages. And it accomplishes this through dialogue, rather than through narration or exposition. We see that Chihiro is dedicated to working with his father, and despite his dad's quirks, he truly respects and admires him, and feels a sense of responsibility both to him and to their shared craft. Shiba tells us that Chihiro's dad is a hero in this world, and then Kunishige imparts onto Chihiro a lesson about the ugly truth of the swordsmithing industry. That while these swords are obviously items of beauty that take skill and artistic ability to create, they're still ultimately weapons capable of inflicting pain or even death on people, and that as the creators of such weapons, they hold some responsibility for this. Chihiro accepts the weight of what his father tells him and answers the call to adventure. Just a little writing term there. And with that, we finish the introduction and begin our story with show development. The show phase begins when we move out of exposition and introduction and into the flow of the actual story. In Kagurabachi, we fast forward 38 months into the future and learn that an evil sorcerer has emerged from the shadows to become a menace to the fair city folk. We find out that this guy has some serious powers, turning this innocent victim into a tree or something. But where's Chihiro, you might be asking? Well, he's on a train. He's on a train. Not only is Chihiro on a train, but he's back and looks like a cool demon slayer. And that's because he is a cool demon slayer! He and Shiba are on a mission to investigate the Yakuza guys that have been working alongside that sorcerer from earlier. Sort of like Todd in Killers of the Flower Moon, except with more magic and less of Martin Scorsese reading something at the end. Our sweet protagonist and his goofy mentor walk through the streets and contemplate how they're going to talk the Yakuza out of Yakuzing. when they encounter this, a bloody and violent display of barbarism, as the local Yakuza have put their most recent victims out for the public to see. This awakens something within Chihiro, and we move on to 10 Twist. Man, Chihiro is such a nice kid, you know? I mean, he's working hard to become a swordsmith, right? I mean, he just wants to help his dad run their shop. He's actually here to fucking murder the hell out of all these Yakuza goons. I mean, goddamn does he murder them good. Now calm down, because he's still a good guy. Definitely. But he's not the kid we started out with on page 1. He's gone through a lot in those skipped 38 months and become a more hardened, ruthless pursuer of what he thinks is right. Now, I don't want to jump the gun and seem too effusive with praise, but this entire segment of the first chapter is a wonderfully violent twist to the story that reminded me of the final act of Chainsaw Man's first chapter when I first read this, and left me feeling like this series was really going to take off. Oh, and then there's an ending.
And this goes on and back and forth for 90 or so minutes until the movie just sort of ends.
Ketsu Resolution. I say, oh, and then there's an ending so cavalierly because there really isn't that much of one. This one-shot leads directly into the rest of the series, so it isn't really resolving that much beyond the conflict of the fight we just read. But don't get me wrong, it still does accomplish a thematic resolution in the short time allotted. At the beginning of this chapter, we're presented with one concept, that Chihiro is a dedicated son. And after the twist, we are given a new perspective, that Chihiro is a badass demon slayer that makes Tanjiro look like fucking Jigglypuff. In this resolution, Chihiro finishes the story by interrogating one of the Yakuza and declares that he's here to cut down all of the monsters. In a way, this brings those two conflicting ideas of Chihiro into harmony. He's still dedicated to his father through the responsibility he shows, which mirrors his father's lesson from earlier, but now he expresses it through his new combat-oriented lifestyle. And that's the end. I was amazed when I first read Kagurabachi because it seemed to perfectly mirror so many of the story elements that we as manga writers learn to include in our stories. There's silly characters, mentor characters, cool protagonist, a quirky kid shows up later, special fighting moves. There's a clear expression of the theme of the story, and it follows Kishōtenketsu to the letter. It seemed clear to me that the author, Takeru Hokazono, must have really known what he was doing when he wrote this first chapter, and it seemed like a no-brainer to me that Kagurabachi was going to become Jump's next great shonen series. But as the chapters kept coming, I started to feel something different. It seemed a little too perfect. It was like someone sat down and did everything right to craft the next Chainsaw Man / Hell's Paradise / Jujutsu Kaisen. You know what? Let me read that again as Super Eyepatch Wolf. But as the chapters kept coming, I started to feel something different. It seemed a little too perfect. It was like someone sat down and did everything right to craft the next Chainsaw Man, Hell's Paradise, Jujutsu Kaisen. And they did. They really did do a good job writing that kind of story. But one of the things that I loved about Chainsaw Man when I read it was that it was not the perfect story. Okay, he gets sad. You know, he's up and then he's serious and sad. Anyway, Chainsaw Man wasn't by any means what a teacher or a guidebook or a textbook or one of those how to draw manga books would tell you to do in order to create a smash hit. It's a weird story that has a lot of rough edges and is going to turn off a lot of people. But that's kind of what makes it perfect. It had, cue the song, perfect imperfections. Whereas, in comparison to Chainsaw Man, Kagurabachi is maybe just a little bit too perfect. Now, don't get me wrong, I like Kagurabachi a lot. I still think that it has a lot of potential to become one of Jump's strongest titles going forward, not least because of Hokuzono's incredible artwork, which really, and I mean it, is something special, worthy of recognition and praise all on its own. I also don't want to discredit the things that Kagurabachi does well in terms of using story structures, character archetypes, and familiar elements to create a really solid foundation for telling its story. These tried and true guides and formulas are something that every author is familiar with and uses in their work, myself included, and they're nothing to be ashamed of. In fact, the whole point of my channel here is to try to help aspiring authors recognize those exact same elements within the stories that they love in order to replicate them in their own original works. But I guess what I wanted to say here, though, is that you should never allow structure and genre and expectations to overwhelm your unique voice. Because if these elements are things that we can find in every story, from your favorite to your least favorite, then the things that make something great will never be found there. It can provide you with the solid foundations you need to grow and thrive, to be sure, but only you, the author, and your voice can make stories great. Thanks for watching this video. If you enjoyed it, then I'd appreciate it if you stuck around to catch the next one. And don't forget to leave me a suggestion for a topic you'd like to see me cover next. See you next time. Bye. Oh, and before you go, I just want to say thank you for staying with this channel through this year. I'm hoping to publish a really great one-shot I've been working on with a friend of mine. I've been working on with a friend of mine. I'm sick, by the way. I've been working on with a friend of mine for a long time now, and we're hoping to finally get it out soon. So, oh my god. Guys, this is a long recording, and I'm sick. Oh, I don't know if my voice has ever sounded this bad in my life. But anyway, long story short, thank you, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.